Arcane is one of the most astonishing series that has ever aired. I knew that was going to be this video's opening line before the finale had even dropped. As a pure spectacle, as a pioneering piece of animation technology, as a next step in the evolution of popular adult animation, as a new approach to how video game companies adapt their stories for screen, Arcane has been pushing more envelopes than your nan in the run-up to Christmas. Simply put, there has never really been a show quite like Arcane. And with its second and officially final season now wrapped up, I wanted to take a moment to appreciate just how special this series has been, cover some of the discourse around it, and discuss what this second season might mean for the future of other stories in this universe, and adult animation more broadly. But first, let's talk numbers. $250 million. That's the total that Riot Games spent on producing Arcane, making it easily the most expensive animated series of all time. But yeah, just look at any frame of this show and it looks like a $250 million production. But that number doesn't tell the whole story. It also includes Arcane's marketing budget, which is never included when discussing things like movie budgets, for example. And a good rule of thumb is that a movie's marketing budget is equal to its production budget. I don't know if that 50-50 split is exactly the same for TV, but even at a fairly conservative estimate, I'd still wager that around 100 million of that 250 million total was spent on Arcane's marketing. So let's say 150 million went on production. Over 2 seasons. That's $75 million for 6 hours of animation that looks like this. That feels insanely cheap to me. And taking it back to that $250 million total, you know what else cost that much? Red 1, and that was a film so ugly and generic that it was already forgotten about before we reached the holiday it was based around. So yeah, as a consumer, I don't really care how much companies spend on their shows if they're going to look this good. Also, any money spent on Arcane is indirect marketing for League of Legends. Riot probably would have spent that money on something anyway, and by spending it on Arcane, I now have an emotional attachment to the intellectual property of a game I've been warned I should never play. Also, I haven't seen anyone actually in the animation community outraged by the budget either. Heaven forbid animators actually getting paid a decent wage for their talents. And let's talk about those talents, because goddamn. Fortiche, the studio behind Arcane's actual animation, are genuinely pushing the capabilities of what's possible with TV animation. For those that don't know, Fortiche employ this 2D 3D hybrid style for Arcane, where the backgrounds are loose brushed 2D paintings that are then projected onto simplistic 3D environments, giving the impression of a fully rendered 3D space at a fraction of the time and cost. Which means that Arcane is able to have an incredible variety of backgrounds and locations without needing to painstakingly design and detail from every angle, which is the case in standard 3D animation and can be a huge burden on time and budget. On the other side of that, the characters and props are entirely 3D, but their textures are digitally painted with the same sort of brushwork as the backgrounds to create this seamless effect where it's hard to tell where the 3D characters end and the 2D backgrounds begin. And then the other layer is the special effects. Fire, electricity, explosions, liquids, smoke, Jinx's hallucinations, the special and particle effects on Arcane are traditional, hand-drawn 2D animation, which is overlaid on top of the 3D characters and is running at half the frame rate, giving the effects this eye-catching, chunky impact that makes every hit feel so much heavier. But then, of course, because the backgrounds are paintings, anything that looks like a light source isn't actually projecting any light or shade on the 3D characters. So when Fortiche come to light the shots, they are inferring where the 3D light should be based on the 2D backgrounds and the 2D special effects, which bakes this 2D 3D sandwich into a delicious, indulgent francesinha, which won't mean anything to 99% of you, but just know it is the best sandwich I have ever eaten. I just needed you to know how good that sandwich was. Anyway, that creates the incredible, beautiful, painterly art style that Arcane is known for, but that is not where Fortiche's finesse ends. They continue to blend styles through the other aspects of their animation too. They employ incredibly subtle facial expressions that allow characters to convey tons of emotion without words. At times it's so convincing that it looks like mocap, almost bringing a sense of live action into the series. But it's not. Every action, expression and minute movement is individually keyframed by an animator. That means that when the series goes for a bombastic larger-than-life action sequence, the characters' bodies are capable of seamlessly transitioning between these minute micro-expressions to these huge exaggerated movements which we're much more used to seeing in animation and would not be possible with mocap or live action. These live action influences are also seen in how Arcane treats its camera work, by artificially introducing camera shakes, lens zooms, focus pulls and chromatic aberration that absolutely do not need to exist in animation, and means that an animator has actively gone in and added these imperfections into the show's camera just to make it feel more immersive. There is an incredible blend of subtle styles and artistic touches to the show that you can break down any scene or shot and just be blown away by the sheer craftsmanship. Nothing in animation is real. Everything you see is intentionally created by someone, and in Arcane, whether it's witnessing the birth of a god or the most mundane, insignificant little screw, the attention to detail and the artistry is clearly evident in every single frame. But it's not just visually where the show excels either. Sonically, it is a marvel as well. The quality of the voice acting and sound design in Arcane never falters, and I think quite often gets taken for granted for just how good it is. When it comes to the music, I will concede that the regularity of the montages in Season 2 did make them feel less organic than in the first, but honestly, I really don't care. They all still slap. Showrunner Christian Linker was previously a music composer at Riot. Fortish's relationship with Riot started over 10 years ago, making music videos for Get Jinxed, Imagine Dragons and KDA. Music is in Arcane's DNA, and when so much of the visual style holds the potential for compelling emotive storytelling without dialogue, I want the show to lean into that and accentuate the musicality of its storytelling with actual music. Those montages are part of what makes Arcane Arcane, and I'll give the show as much leeway as it wants with this, even if it trips into being a little style over substance at times, because, as a great man once said, when the style is this hype, substance can suck my dick. That's a Hayao Miyazaki quote. Yeah, let's go with that. But alright, I've glazed the show's technical aspects enough. Let's talk about how it's pushing a new approach in how studios adapt games. The success of Arcane's translation from a largely storyless, rage-inducing MOBA to a deeply emotional, story-led cinematic animation isn't something that just happens on its own. It's a testament to just how perfect this collaboration between Riot and Fortiche has been, especially given neither had any experience in making TV shows before. And it puts me in mind of another show that came out around the same time as Arcane's first season, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Both of these shows were animations that debuted on Netflix, both were bittersweet adaptations of video games, but crucially, both were direct collaborations between the game developers and the animation studio. Typically, when a game is adapted, the rights are bought by a major studio and then production companies get brought in to develop the actual show or movie. That's not an inherently bad process. It can produce success stories, but there's no guarantee that the people brought in to call the shots will really understand or respect the source material. For Arcane and Edgerunners, both game companies approached their animation partners to produce the shows entirely in-house. People who'd worked on those games for years were the ones writing the stories in worlds they'd helped develop. And then the animators weren't there to simply follow storyboards, they were collaborative partners, given creative freedom on how that story was told. Echo and Jinx's romance was something that was really prompted by the Fortiche team before Riot got on board, and in Edgerunners, fan favourite gun gremlin Rebecca was a character entirely created by Studio Trigger. And while both are branded as Netflix shows, Netflix didn't have any creative involvement in either. They simply bought the distribution contract once the shows were already in development. Now, obviously, not every game dev is in a financial situation where they can take this approach. Without banking in on the adaptation rights and leaving it to the production company, the game studio has to finance the series themselves and take on the risks if the show is unsuccessful. But what this approach does mean is that the people working on the show understand the story, characters, and world they are writing for. And by bringing on the right animation partner and giving them creative freedom, you're bringing on artists to collaborate with and translate those ideas into visuals in the most meaningful and impressive way. When it goes right, you get this best of both worlds result, where the fingerprints of both the original game creators and the signature style of the animators combine to forge this beautifully unique creation that neither side could ever have made on their own. And I'm hopeful that other studios will look at the success of Edgerunners and the success of Arcane and follow in their footsteps, creating adaptations that are more than just cash grabs or forgettable flashes in the pan, but do what good adaptations should do: make newcomers fall in love with their world for the first time, and make long-time fans fall in love with it all over again. Thanks for watching. Also, shout out to Singed, who spent the entire show committing horrific atrocities and ruining people's lives, and ended up getting rewarded with everything he wanted consequence-free. I can't even be mad. I respect the hustle.